Caesar is Russian. He's taking a break at a monastery from fighting Russians in nearby Bakhmut. It's a relief from scenes like this, Bakhmut's Ukrainian field hospital. He's been defending this Ukrainian town from Russia's most intense assault along an 800-mile front. Artillery duels and trench warfare have almost destroyed Bakhmut as Russia throws its army at a bid for victory after months of defeats to the north and south.
I love Ukraine.
Defending Bakhmut against his Russian motherland is a religious imperative for Caesar. The fighting is very brutal now, he says. There are very few prisoners. When you see those Russians in your gun sights, what do you think and what do you feel? I believe that these people who've broken the law of man and the law of God, I have no pity for them. I take them prisoner if I can, but most often I just have to kill them. So have you killed a lot of your countrymen? A dozen and a half.
This is the remains of a Russian Orthodox monastery. Now, for Vladimir Putin, the Orthodox Church is absolutely central to his vision of the Russian world. For some Russians, though, that's a world they don't want to live in. Indeed, they don't want it to survive.
Ukraine's Orthodox Church broke with Moscow 3 years ago. This is all that's left of a rebranded Ukrainian Orthodox St. George's Monastery after 9 months of war.
Putin says that he defends traditional values, yeah? And that's the result of his defending. Ruined old monastery.
Vinny has been fighting in Bakhmut for weeks against mercenaries from Russia's Wagner company, many of them convicted criminals. It's obvious, he says. When private companies hire criminals and convicts, imagine, a man kills once and they put him in jail, then he kills a second time and he becomes a repeat offender under the law. Then he gets let out of jail and given a gun. That's not a person, that's a beast. After a former Wagner deserter, Yevgeny Nushin, was murdered in a video that was praised by Wagner's boss, Yevgeny Prigozhin, Vinny is in no doubt how he would be treated if captured. It'll be the end, 100%, but it'll just be more painful. The Russian Legion does claim to be in the hundreds, and it says many more back home are trying to join Ukraine's army. Alongside their Ukrainian allies, the Russian Legion is focused on the battle for Bakhmut. The aim of the war after is more ambitious. He says, I'm doing my military and Christian duty. I defend the Ukrainian people. And when Ukraine is free, I will carry my sword to Russia to free it from tyranny.
The Supreme Court now poised to decide whether certain businesses can refuse to work with same-sex couples on the basis of free speech.
Granting such a license to discriminate would empower all businesses that offer what they believe to be expressive services, from architects to photographers to consultants, to refuse service to customers because of their disability, sexual orientation, religion, or race.
Colorado web designer Lori Smith, who openly declares she's selective about websites she'll design, brought the case. She's asking the Supreme Court to rule that she does not have to comply with a state law that prohibits businesses from discriminating against same-sex couples.
The state of Colorado is forcing me to create custom, unique artwork, expression, communicating and celebrating a different view of marriage, a view of marriage that goes against my deeply held beliefs.
But the liberal-leaning justices expressed concern that if creators can choose their customers, discrimination could run rampant. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson asking whether a mall photographer could say only white kids can sit on Santa's lap, and Justice Sonia Sotomayor asking about interracial or physically disabled couples being turned away.
So it doesn't really, there is no line on race, there is no line on disability, ethnicity, none of the protected categories.
That's
in a public accommodation law.
The First Amendment is broad enough to cover the lesbian website designer and the Catholic calligrapher. The line is that no one on any side of any debate has to be compelled to express a message that violates their core convictions.
Smith says she is in the business of expressive speech, and while she's not opposed to working with same-sex couples in other areas, she argues she should be able to choose the messages she promotes, an argument some conservative justices seem to side with.
So the question isn't who, it's what.
always.
Why are you right about how you characterize website designers? Why are they different from, say, restaurants?
Because they're creating speech. In those other examples, speech is not at issue.
The Supreme Court sidestepped this same issue 4 years ago, ruling in favor of a Colorado baker who refused to make wedding cakes for same-sex couples, but on very narrow grounds that only applied to that case.
Our rights are not up for debate.
Now the stakes are much higher, with concern building among LGBTQ advocates that a ruling for the website designer could be a harbinger for other adverse rulings.
If there were to be a loophole of the kind discussed, people with disabilities, African Americans, Jews, Muslims, others could find themselves without access to the marketplace.
This is the kind of line Beijingers stand in, outside in the cold to get their COVID tests. A 48-hour test is required to get into most places. But there aren't many places to go. Much of Beijing is still closed down. This is one of the most popular tourist places in the city, but the restaurants are largely closed and the malls are pretty empty. So this McDonald's is still open, but for takeaway only. But even to get takeaway, you've got to prove that you're clear of COVID. And here's how I do it. I open up the health app on my smartphone. I scan the QR code. So it says I've got a green code and I've got a recent COVID test, so I'm good to go. This code dictates all of our daily lives in China. Green means good to go. Red means I may have to isolate at home or go to a mass quarantine facility. This allows China to track the movements of virtually all 1.4 billion people in the name of contact tracing. I've got to scan my code to get into a taxi, a public park, a mall, or a coffee shop, even a public bathroom.
I ran into a group of delivery people on the street. They've got to do COVID tests every single day to do their jobs. This woman tells me the pandemic has been hard on her. I ask her why. She says it's because she's scared of the virus.
Getting COVID in China is unlike anywhere else in the world. You and your close contacts all get sent to a quarantine center. This is a convention center in Beijing that's been turned into a massive quarantine facility with thousands of beds. But some of these facilities in the country, they are in very rundown and unsanitary condition. And then your whole building or community could go into lockdown.
I spoke to a man who's been in and out of quarantine 6 times already just this year. He tells me his whole building of more than 200 families went to a quarantine facility last month because they were considered close contacts. He says he's not scared to get COVID because Omicron is less severe and his whole family has been vaccinated. I approached a few people just released from this mass quarantine center here. I asked if they had tested positive for COVID. Yes, the man nods and says they have recovered. How many days did you spend in there? I asked. 7 days, he said. Unprecedented protests recently erupted across China.
They're chanting that they don't want COVID tests. They want freedom.
Authorities swiftly cracked down on the protesters, but they are finally softening their stance on zero COVID. Some cities are lifting lockdowns, changing COVID testing requirements. Under some conditions, people can now quarantine at home if they have COVID, which is a huge deal. But this country has already built up a whole infrastructure around zero COVID, spending all of its resources on quarantine facilities and COVID testing. So it's going to be a long and slow exit from zero COVID.
La propagación de los incendios forestales en el norte de La Paz afectaron a 5 municipios. Uno de los más afectados es el municipio de La Asunta, y desde la Dirección de Riesgos y Atención de Desastre anunciaron que enviarán más brigadas para mitigar el fuego en estas regiones.
La Asunta estaría como un municipio que tiene una afectación amplia, también palos blancos, ¿no? Al momento. Entonces, en relación a ello, estamos viendo ya la ayuda que se va a llevar a estos municipios. Adicionalmente a ello tenemos el municipio de Irupana, también Chulumani, ¿no? Que también se está coordinando ya con estos municipios para la llegada de material y ayuda correspondiente, ¿no? En el tema de mitigación de los focos de calor que se están presentando en estos municipios.
La intensa humareda provocó problemas respiratorios en la salud de los pobladores y desde esta unidad indicaron que desplazarán personal médico para asistirlos.
Se tienen, ¿no?, afectaciones respiratorias, se tienen afectaciones en los ojos también, ¿no? Se está pidiendo para ello colirio, se nos ha pedido sales de rehidratación. Estamos viendo ya la manera de enviar, ¿no?, potabilizadores de agua para también brindarles a los comunarios de estos sectores.
Guy Canijo and his family have been stewards of Mauna Kea for generations. For them, this is their home that they are deeply concerned about.
If the lava continued, then eventually if it reached the grasslands below us, then a fire would ensue. And not only would the ranch lands, ours, be jeopardized, but the entire mountain of Mauna Kea.
Canijo and his brother have about 100 cattle on their properties. Their cousins have about 100 more. Officials have repeated that no homes, properties, or families are in danger.
It upset me because that's not true. At first I was thinking, could it be that we don't count, that we are insignificant? And I don't want to raise the prejudice issue, but is it because we the Hawaiians and we're second rate?
At a press conference today, the Hawaii County Civil Defense Administrator says they are aware of this family.
There may be the chance that lava could encroach onto the rangeland and maybe do fire, cause wildland fires, but I know our fire department is in consultation with DHHL as far as them putting in fire breaks.
The Canijo Ohana says it's not just about them, it's about protecting a sacred Mauna.
All the time, effort, funds that people put into the habitat, the ecosystem, the watershed, if we're not prepared, and I mean proactively prepared to fight this fire, forget about the lava flow, that's not going to come uphill. That's common sense. The fact of the matter is that once it hits the grasslands, we need to fight a fire.
He says officials with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands were up on their property today getting it ready for fire breaks. So while this view sure is dazzling, he hopes it doesn't last too long.
The Ross family didn't think their Thanksgiving vacation to Hawaii would turn into a sightseeing opportunity of a lifetime.
You'll never forget it, and it's just one of those things you just couldn't look away. You just wanted to keep looking at it.
This is the view from their hotel, more than 50 miles away from Mauna Loa. In fact, you can even see the glow over his shoulder in our interview. The lava flow is getting closer to a busy highway. That attention created headaches for state officials because of safety reasons. They had to put up no parking signs.
There were, hundreds of cars parked on the street just to get a glimpse of something that, I'm sure around here that doesn't happen very often.
The Ross family is headed back home today. They say this is a vacation they'll never forget.
So we're kind of lucky, actually, just to be able to be here while this is all happening.
Este fin de semana los bañistas veranearon al lado de pelícanos muertos. En la Costa Verde, incluso, algunos comían al lado de las aves infectadas con la gripe aviar.
Sí, recién lo veo, no lo había visto. Recién hemos llegado.
¿De dónde vienen ustedes?
De Canto Grande.
Ante este panorama, la ministra de Salud, Kelly Portalatino, anunció que la semana entrante evaluarán el cierre de playas del norte y de Lima. ¿Se va a evaluar entonces?
Por supuesto que se va a evaluar. El lunes, a horas de la tarde, se van a reunir de nuevo para ver porque ha aumentado las cifras de muertes de estos pelícanos.
Hasta el momento, en nuestro país, no se ha registrado ningún humano que haya contraído el virus de la influenza H5N1. La ministra Portalatino participó de una campaña de sensibilización para protegernos de la COVID-19. Dijo que en 2 semanas se establecería la fecha de colocación de la 5ª dosis para personas mayores de 50 años. Respecto a la moción de vacancia contra el presidente de la República, consideró que no es necesaria la presencia de Pedro Castillo en el Congreso y agregó:
No creo que prospere porque no hay los votos. Sé que van a reflexionar en estos días de representación nuestros hermanos congresistas y van a escuchar el clamor de las regiones. Acá no hay cabildeo, acá lo usual es coordinar, conversar con las bancadas para que eleven las propuestas de solución de las brechas de sus regiones, de cada congresista. No hay otra intención.
Y sobre la denuncia constitucional contra los ministros por la interpretación de la cuestión de confianza, dijo:
Me parece que hay una desesperación, ¿no? Por todas medidas estamos con vacancia. Si no es vacancia, como no hay los votos, está la suspensión. Si no hay la suspensión, que quieren presionar al todos los ministros que han firmado esta cuestión de confianza. Yo creo que no es el mecanismo, no es la vía más saludable. Yo exhorto a nuestros congresistas que primero veamos al país.
Portalatino se mostró confiada en que esta acusación constitucional no prosperará.
Queremos extenderles una gran invitación a todos nuestros televidentes de Telaruba para que sigan bien conectados con Primera Plana con Alejandra Forero, que transmitimos de lunes a viernes en nuestros 3 diferentes horarios. A las 6:30 nuestra premier, tendremos nuestra repetición a las 7:30 de la mañana y a la 1 de la tarde con las mejores noticias locales, internacionales, todos los sucesos que les dan la vuelta al mundo, noticias de virales, noticias de farándula y muchísimo más. Así que todos los días tenemos una cita aquí en Primera Plana con Alejandra Forero.
Nos Mainta, Turja Luna, Jaranzón y Javierna, de nuevo para su norte Mainta. Repetición a tarde y su siguiente día, riba live streaming. Nos Mainta ta entretener, educar y informar. Nos Mainta, aquí na mes na Telearuba.
This is Raval, a neighborhood just a short walk from Barcelona's Ramblas. Raval is like many barrios here in the center of the city. It has gone through huge transformation in recent years. What was once considered a dangerous part of town is now becoming gentrified. The rise of short-stay vacation platforms has been one of the key factors in bringing tourists.
Vulture funds or investment companies have come in. They buy entire buildings and they turn them into tourist rentals. A lot of the neighbours have now gone
to apartments in neighbourhoods like this. It has benefited landlords, but has.
Renting here is really tough, and even more for young people like us. We work, yes, but to live in this neighbourhood now is really difficult.
Latest figures show that tourism in the city is almost back to pre-pandemic levels. Close to 8 million visitors flocked to Barcelona this year. That's more than 4 times the population of those living within the city limits. One of the biggest challenges facing city authorities is to balance a successful tourist economy with the needs of the local community. Barcelona was one of the first cities to regulate the short-term rental market. Landlords need a special tourist rental license, and no new ones have been issued in the past 8 years.
En Barcelona no es posible construir hoteles nuevos.
In Barcelona, it is impossible to build new hotels, and there have been no new tourist licenses for apartments in 8 years. There has been over 20,000 apartments inspection, leading to over 2,500 sanctions. There are around 500 illegal non-apartments a year.
Working directly with online platforms to help remove illegal short-term rentals have gone some way to helping rebalance the issues it created within local communities. Critics and pressure groups say more can be done to help protect those most vulnerable in the city centre neighbourhoods. The local community here in Raval certainly hope so.
I feel like I haven't even processed this yet. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's hard to put into words.
For the first time in the daylight,
Tyler Rebel has seen his entire life in a pile of ash after this devastating fire destroyed his home Sunday night. But in the wake of tragedy, Rebel can't help but feel thankful.
She's my best friend, man. She's a good dog. She's my hero right now, and I'm really proud of her.
Rebel says his 6-year-old dog, Monroe, is the only reason he's alive.
She didn't even hesitate. She knew something was wrong, and she had to get me out of there, and that's what she did.
He says it all started when he decided to take a Sunday nap while watching football.
She jumped on the bed and just instantly was like nudging my head and whining and like a cry kind of, like a whimper.
Rebel woke up to a thick cloud of black smoke that filled his entire house. Barely able to see, barely able to breathe, he grabbed Monroe, ran down the hall, and barely made it past the flames racing toward his room.
I think we got out in the nick of time, man. Just really lucky. I think if she wasn't there, I wouldn't have made it out alive for sure.
While Rebel has a long road ahead, he says he has a new perspective on what truly matters in life.
I think we take a lot for granted, you know, and all that stuff in there isn't what matters, you know. Like, it can all be replaced. She can't, like I can't. It is a very humbling experience.
In its southwestern province of Yunnan lives the Asian elephant, the largest land animal in the continent. The Asian elephant is classified as an endangered species. Ahimsa came to see Shongbana in 2016 to study the creature's behavior and a better way for humans to coexist with their giant neighbors.
Elephants are really protected here. So then I think that has led to a growing elephant population, and elephants are growing beyond these natural areas.
The Spanish ecologist believes one of the reasons behind increasing human-elephant conflicts lies in China's success in forest conservation. Over the last decade, 1 in 4 trees has been planted in China.
森林好了以后，亚洲象可以挤食的一些草本植物逐渐的减少，然后亚洲象为了生还，它就会走出森林，进入老百姓到当地群众的生产生活区域。你什么？1/3了，吧？鱼塘也全部塌了，鱼塘在的，人家也是在这个下面的。红外相机目前为止是我们作为亚洲象监测的一个重要的一个手段。我们把红外相机安装在亚洲象经常出没的那些路径，只要红外相机能够抓拍到了那头象以后，10到15秒，然后我们就会把这条信息推送到亚洲象出现的那个位置的那些周边村寨。
凤泽6队675庆头有亚洲象活动。
要保证我们的信息能够及时准确地传递给当地老百姓，尽可能的减少人与象遭遇的一个几率，减少人员伤亡的一个事件的发生。
China is a pioneer in terms of technology, and particularly in this kind of telecommunications, and so I think in that sense we have access to technological tools that are not available in other places. But if we're able to develop tools that work here, being it technological, being it in terms of policies or institutions, these kind of lessons can be transferred to other countries.
La ciudad de Quito, capital de Ecuador, celebra sus 488 años de fundación con múltiples eventos culturales y desfiles tradicionales que volvieron a tomarse las calles luego de 3 años de ausencia por la pandemia de la enfermedad del nuevo coronavirus COVID-19. La agenda de fiestas iniciada el pasado 25 de noviembre terminará el próximo 6 de diciembre, cuando se cumple oficialmente un aniversario más de la fundación. A lo largo de esta semana, los quiteños han venido disfrutando de variadas actividades que recogen las tradiciones más representativas de la celebración, como festivales, ferias gastronómicas, juegos y desfiles en los espacios públicos. Uno de los más grandes eventos multicolor se realizó en el Centro Histórico de Quito, considerado como el mejor conservado de Sudamérica, donde desfilaron más de 7.000 integrantes de los 54 mercados de la urbe más poblada de Ecuador. El acto, que se denominó Los Mercados Saludan a Quito, en homenaje a la fundación, recorrió varias zonas del centro hasta llegar a la Plaza de la Independencia, situada frente al Palacio Presidencial, donde cientos de ciudadanos se apostaron para observar el desfile. El alcalde de Quito, Santiago Guarderas, estuvo presente en el desfile que entrelazó la historia y la cultura de Quito, que son fundamentales en la fiesta popular. Mientras tanto, el 6 de diciembre se realizará una sesión solemne por la Fundación de Quito, la ciudad más cercana al sol y rodeada de un entorno natural montañoso pintoresco.
Well, the annual tree outside Rockefeller Center in New York City is up, and as always, it's a humdinger of a holiday looker. But what if you want a ginormous jolly tree like that inside a community landmark? Can't be done, you say? Nebraskans said, hold my eggnog. Video shared online by the Durham Museum shows crews tackling the tricky undertaking in the simplest way possible, hooking the 40-foot tree up to 2 big trucks and dragging her on in through the museum entrance. There's something you don't see every day. The not-so-subtle evergreen effort was even praised on Jimmy Kimmel Live.
They had to be drunk when they came up with this plan.
Is praised the right word? Hey, you know what? It worked, and the tree is up and gorgeous, and I say all's fair in love and decor. Speaking of decor, Tampa International Airport's giant flamingo needs no introduction, but it does need a name. The airport is hosting an online naming contest with prizes, including round-trip airline tickets. Submissions are welcome until December 6th, and here's a few ideas. Bingo the Flamingo, Ernest Flamingway, Bertie McFlamingo Face, and so forth. Fly like an eagle, ribbity-doo. Sorry, I can't watch this video of a beautiful rehabilitated eagle without getting all Steve Millery on you. The golden eagle was found injured in Utah and taken to the Best Friends Animal Society, and after 9 months of rehabilitation, was brought to a scenic Arizona cliff where it flew right into the future. Do-do-do-do. Take a look at this. Do-do-do-do. I'm Jeremy Roth.
Esta es una cena especial y no es para cualquier paladar. El menú navideño de este 2022 está compuesto por tarántulas, chapulines y gusanos de maguey. En el plato fuerte, carne de cocodrilo, león o jabalí, y de postre, un escorpión.
Pues sería más que nada por probar algo nuevo, ¿no? Por salir de lo cotidiano, de lo mismo de cada año. Más que nada por eso.
Si todavía no sabe qué cenará en Navidad con su familia o amigos, en el mercado de San Juan va a encontrar estas peculiares opciones. Aunque usted no lo crea, estos platillos son considerados gourmet por su forma de preparación.
El cocodrilo pues es como un filete de pescado, amigo, tiene la misma postura. Ese te sale en $6.50 el kilo y es muy suave. El león pues la carne es un poquito más fuerte. Y pues también nada más emparrilladas. El jabalí igual, pues es un tipo como el puerco.
Y también hay para todos los bolsillos. 1 kilo de gusanos de maguey está en 2.500 pesos el kilo y unos alacranes en 180 pesos por pieza.
Tenemos el plato de insectos mixtos, que son 8 tipos de insectos diferentes. Les incluye un chote mezcal, de gusano, pechuga.
El mercado de San Juan es considerado un oasis exótico con los ingredientes más extraños para hacer su cena navideña, aunque tiene opciones más tradicionales, como el conejo o el lechón, para los paladares convencionales.